Good morning. On behalf of the RDIAC and Southeast Cornerstone School Division and all of the school divisions across the province, I'd like to introduce Mr. Don Brit. Mr. Don Brit has been a minister now for several years, and he's going to share with us his story, where he's from and what got him into the ministry. Thanks so much for joining us here, Don, and I hope all is well with you and your family, and I'll let you take her away.
Indeed. Thanks, Jeff, and thanks for having me. It's wonderful to be with you folks, and if I connect with someone out there who may be considering moving in this kind of direction career-wise, then that's wonderful. And if not, if you're going in another way, I hope there's something transferable that can be applied. Jeff just asked about what got me into ministry, and that brings me way back to when I had hair and a 28-inch waist. I was at a university. I'm from Nova Scotia, and the university I went to was Acadia. And two things that have been very important in my life have been music and people. And I was a musician from a very young age. And I took a music degree at Acadia University in the Annapolis Valley, the beautiful Annapolis Valley in Nova Scotia. And I got involved in a chaplaincy community there. And it was sort of a hand-in-glove fit. It was a place where I felt perfectly at home, and which was fine. I was involved musically. I became a chapel assistant at the university, so it meant I would have to do occasional morning talks, chapel services. And all that was good and was rooted in my upbringing, where I was actively involved in a church as well. But then came a perfect autumn day when, at the end of a chapel service that just felt like the perfection of being at home, I went for a long walk along the water, and again, a perfect fall day. And the colors just started changing around me. Everything seemed deeper, more resonant, richer, fuller. I felt like I was tapping into some deep well, some pool that I hadn't really accessed before. It was a simple walk, and it was a profound spiritual experience, which took a while to unpack, like a flower opening up inside of me. And in time, prayerfully, I worked my way through this and felt what I believed was a call to ministry. And I went to the chaplain, who was actually quite a rationalistic soul, and always a very cautious fellow. And he said, well, I was expecting him to say, well, you better look at this, and you really, it sounds like a nice walk, Don, but what does that really mean? And instead, I went to his office that afternoon. I spoke to him, and in a way that wasn't all that coherent. I don't know if I'm being all that coherent right now. And at the end of it, he just glowed and said, yes, that strikes me heart and soul as the genuine article. God, among other things, has been called the ground of all being. And I resonated on a patch of sacred ground in a way that led me in the direction that my life went. So a call to ministry, I think, is what you get out of that. When Jeff invited me to do this, I thought, I'm a big believer that every preacher should have words from Hamlet up on the wall where they can see while they're talking away. And those words are, brevity is the soul of wit. So I'll keep it brief. In terms of ministry, and I was trying to think of people who might be considering career paths. And again, whether it's something like ministry or something in the humanities, reaching out and helping others. There's two things, I guess, that I would like to say. And Jeff, feel free to jump in at any time. Okay, I'll just trundle along here. One is specific to ministry, and one is general to the helping services, being there for others, as teachers are, the profession that births all others, teachers. So specific to ministry, if that tends to be something that you're looking at. And I will give one brief biblical allusion. It's from John's Gospel. It's a well-known story where Thomas is not with his fellow disciples, and they have an encounter of the risen Christ. And they are so overwhelmed by this encounter with the risen Christ that they are just babbling. By the time Thomas shows back up, Jesus now is gone, and Thomas is very doubtful, incredulous, and he says these famous words that unless he can't believe, he literally cannot believe his ears, that his friends are saying that they had an encounter with the risen Christ. And he said, look, unless I can touch the side or put my fingers into the holes in his hands, his feet, I will not believe. And that's a very modern response. It's spoken like a true rationalist. I'll believe what I can see, what philosophers call materialists. That just means you believe in matter. It doesn't mean you have to be materialistic. And I encounter more and more and more of that in my life. And then Jesus appears and has this meeting, and Thomas is there and is overwhelmed, and of course accepts that Christ is real and before him. And Jesus says, you believe because you see. Blessed are those who believe without seeing. Those words have always meant the world to me. You believe because you see. Blessed are those who believe without seeing. I once had the privilege of speaking to at a service where there were ministers, priests, there were people in ministry from across a whole region of the Maritimes. And it hit me when I was looking at them. They were like standing out in the crowd, the ones I knew. And I was looking at them and wanting to speak something into their heart that would be meaningful, something those who were working in ministry could carry with them as they left that place, and hopefully would edify them in some way. And it struck me, I shared that story about Thomas and those words of Jesus, you believe because you see. Blessed are those who believe without seeing. And it occurred to me at that moment just how powerfully those words resonate with me. And I said, look, if we happen to be in ministry and people come to us, if people seek us out, I can't stress this enough. I believe passionately that people seek us out because they want to hear from someone who believes without seeing, who dares to take what Kierkegaard called a leap of faith, and who dares to decide that no, there is more to this universe, to this experience. There is love. There is a purpose that transcends the physical. I choose to believe, and I choose to believe even if it is irrational. It's something that I choose to make part of my core belief system and my experience. And I want to offer that to others. The belief in one who said, in the words of one of his parables, he reaches down into the gutter of a shattered humanity and says, friend, come up higher. So I'll leave that thought with you. And just prayerfully, because I was honestly thinking on more humanistic paths for this, which I'm going to get to now. But I was asked about ministry. Jeff graciously asked me about that, and I believe you can't ignore the spiritual aspect, and so there it is. The second thing that comes to mind. So Jeff, over to you, my friend. I see you.
That's wonderful, Don. I just wanted, and I'll let you get into your second thought. At some point, could you tell us what, for the kids out there, what would be a typical day and week in the life of a minister?
Oh, perfect. Yeah, let's get practical. Yes, it's a life of reactions, I find, and that's something that is difficult. It's hard to be proactive, or at least I'm not very good at it. There might be other people who've been in ministry who might have some wonderful tips, because I find in ministry that you get up with one intention, and by the end of the day, you've lived a completely different day that has nothing at all to do with what you were planning, because you're responding to hurts, you're responding to trials. People that I've spoken to that really know what this is like are social workers. They really get it, where you're lurching from one thing to another, to one crisis to another. And I think this can cross all sorts of vocations. So you have to get ready. I mean, if you like life in a neat little ordered box, then it's hard to find the box most days. I'll just leave it at that. But typically through the week, I would spend time visiting hospitals. I would spend time seeing people in their homes. We would have church meetings. We'd have Bible studies, prayer groups, and sometimes those little regular things, the scheduled stuff, helped keep us grounded a little bit. But it's a life where you have to be ready to drop everything on an instant's notice and go, including in the middle of the night when you get the terrible calls. And I'll share one example of that. So it's a life where you try to program, you try to do what you can, but where you react to human need on a constant basis as it arises.
Well, thanks so much, Don. I think kind of the way you answered that is it's kind of a conduit between being a social worker, and you're reaching out, responding to those people that are hurt, and that are that are in need. And I guess for the students out there, if you're looking at something like this would be a great profession for you. So I'll just let you continue, Don, with some.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. And I guess actually that leads perfectly into the other point that came to mind. And that is, you're in the helping industries, and we can put as spiritual addressing on that as you want, but you have to be willing to hit the road in a way that reaches out to people in real need. So I thought I'd just share one anecdote, a story from when I was ministering full-time the United Church of Canada, if you're interested. I was ordained in the United Church, and I was serving a church in New Brunswick when something profoundly horrible happened. And it's just an example of the point I want to make. There was a police officer who was on his rounds. He was in his police car, and a call came over over the radio, sending him to a home because a baby boy was not responsive. It was the middle of the night. But the dispatcher made a mistake, understandably, that they just didn't make the connection. The police officer was sent to his own home, where he found his wife and their infant boy was in his crib, and it was SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, something that remains, last I heard, something of a horrifying medical mystery to this day. And the baby just died. And again, he was just sent, the dispatch just sent him as though he was responding to any call without making the connection that the dispatcher was sending this young police officer and husband and father to his own home. So I knew them, and they called me, and it was the middle of the night, and I went over, and some other folks had gathered, and a few police officers, a number of them, in fact, and well, I'm sorry about that. I was hoping that wouldn't happen. And I was invited right into their bedroom, where they were both demolished. They were in pieces, and they pulled me down between them, and I sat down between them, and both of them, and soon I was holding both of them as they wept bitterly, and I cried with them. And we began a journey through that deep valley of shadow, the valley of the shadow of death. And it's a searing instant, and it's an example of, I was going to avoid this word because it has such a narrow connotation these days, of the intimacy, and there's sexual intimacy, but the word also means so much more than that, of the profound intimacy of the life I've known in ministry. I could give so many examples. That's, as I say, is a searing one, where we are just welcomed into the absolute depths of brokenness and the profound privilege that is. And that's something above all else that I cherish. I mean, it's hell to go through to see these people in the midst of the hell they're facing. But something profound and genuine and so real and so purpose-filled is found in those depths, when you're with people who are crying out of no answers. And I know I have none either, but I can be with them side by side. There is nothing more profoundly privileged. I'm using that word too much. It is an amazing thing And it is something that I would hold up as the greatest honor of my life in ministry and my life in general. And I'm so sorry for the yapping. Over to you, Joe.
Well, Don, just some little stats there. I know, I think it's roughly between ages 12 and 17 daily. 14% or more of the kids are feeling a lot of stress these days. Very stressed out. And I know it gets into the between 22 and 27% when they get folks between, 20 and 50, and starts to level off a bit, it seems, when people get into their 50s and 60s. So I guess there's so much stress out there today, and I think the words of Billy Graham: if you lose all your money, you've lost nothing. If you lose your health, you've lost something. But if you lose who you are as a person, you've lost everything.
Yeah.
And I just think that kind of the gist of what you're telling us is just being a real human being. For the students out there to make a connection. So if you're into, like, if you're thinking of something like social worker or being a minister, you're connecting so deeply with people that are hurt and that are in dire need, and you certainly have done that. So yeah, kids, this is something that if you're into this area, this is a person to talk to if you're considering this. I'll let you continue, Don, if you want to speak a little bit more. Really enjoying
I guess I'll just finish up, Jeff, by agreeing wholeheartedly with what you're saying. And to those who are hurting, maybe this also will reach somebody who's in that place of deep shadow and not knowing a way forward. And I guess I would say, I would just offer this from my heart to yours, that something about despair. I was once speaking to a lady who grew up in the Great Depression, and she said she was so proud of her father because there were years and years when they got nothing for a harvest. And she said proudly, she said, my father always sowed. He always kept trying. He always kept putting one foot ahead of the other and moving on. And there's something powerful in that, but I think there's a place even beyond it, because all these other farmers around him weren't sowing. And that isn't laziness, obviously. That is something far worse than that. That is despair. And when we are in those kind of depths, all I can offer is this, something that came in my heart some years ago. My heart and soul belief that despair is that lie which assures us there is no help, that God will not help us, that no one will help us. Despair is a kind of vicious lie that assures us we are utterly alone and there is no one who will answer the call if we reach out. Reach out. There is someone. And if you're not disposed to faith, then reach out. There are people who care. Okay, there are people who can be connected on this video who care. And if you are disposed to faith, also that at the heart and soul of our faith is the belief that God does care. But whatever walk of life this might find you at, please know that there are resources, there are people who have been called, like Jeff is saying, including folks in social work, teachers, and so many others walks of life, who are there to support and care for you and help you through this valley at this time. That'd be it, Jeff. Over to you.
Well, Don, I thank you so much for your kind words and your words of wisdom. I know you certainly touched my heart today, and I'm sure Renette's heart also. And hopefully we get a bunch of students out there that are able to watch this and through their curriculum. And if they are feeling a little bit of despair and so forth, they can maybe gain some hope and perhaps look at an alternate profession that they maybe didn't look at. So, Don, on behalf of us all here at RDIC and all of the divisions, I'd just like to thank you so much today for taking your time to talk to us all. And you and your family, please take care, and I hope nothing but the best for you moving forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You folks have a wonderful day. Thank